Dear friends, today the topic of discussion is collaborative filtering of media pedagogy. Media pedagogy is a new area of discussion when it comes to media education. As all of us know, mass media are an essential linkage between people and society. Many educational experts have their own concerns about the impact of mass media on the younger generation, the academic aspect of it in particular. For them, mass media, within quotes, content and quality are not always educationally valuable or desirable, end quotes. However, the role of mass media in any society, for that matter, cannot be ignored. The importance of mass media education must not be underestimated for the reason that mass media are also an agent of education and also of change. As a result, mass media have been aptly designated as common man's university. With media education gaining a strong foothold in India, it is necessary to assign a formal pedagogical structure to it. Then what is pedagogy? The question has to be answered. It is defined as another word for education. It has also been described as the profession and science of teaching. It refers to the interactions between students and teachers in the context of learning environments and the learning tasks. The 5 pedagogical approaches are constructivism, inquiry-based, reflective, collaborative, and integrative. There is one more variation called critical pedagogy based on critical theory. In this, the students are encouraged to question and challenge the propositions of teachers. In fact, media pedagogy has received much attention only in recent times. Media education in formal institutions in India has necessitated the designing of a comprehensive curriculum. If we think of a pedagogical structure, then we will have to understand the other aspect known as media didactics. Under common circumstances, the term pedagogy denotes itself as a theory of education. It is in which external factors like teaching and upbringing can impact the object of influence, which means the students. Didactics has been described as the methodology of education. It is also considered as reflection of practice. Here, the teacher can realize his or her educational objective. Didactics is identified as the theory of the teacher as a reflective practitioner because he or she specializes in his or her field of called education. Pedagogy is of second-order educational reflection. This is a reflection of unity and reflection of education. The subject of pedagogy is educational theory, while the subject of didactics is educational methodology. When we combine media with pedagogy, it becomes media pedagogy. It means that it is a special kind of educational theory that focuses on media teaching and training. Can we compare media pedagogy with literature pedagogy or language pedagogy or, for that matter, pedagogy of natural sciences? The answer is a firm yes. As already pointed out, media pedagogy can be rated as a special kind of educational theory which may include not only teaching but also upbringing in a media society. When we discuss media pedagogy, there can be a question like this: what happens to education when students are experienced media users? Should the teacher adopt a different teaching method in this social context? Can he or she, for example, train the students not to be influenced by mass media? Another important question is, does the socialization in a media society demand or condition teaching differently? We have to realize here that there is every chance of better informed people becoming more impatient for results. Media pedagogy may also mean that it is a specialized part of pedagogy with focus on the use and role of media in education. Let us consider this situation. When a teacher teaches, he or she uses media. Here, media could be language for speaking, blackboard for writing, and body language for a direct communicational relation. Computers and digital networks are also included for communication. Thus, media pedagogy can be interpreted in three ways. The first one is the theory of media education. How does one teach his or her students to use media, and how does a teacher teach them about, within quotes, media as a phenomenon in society? The second one is the theory of education. It is created under those special conditions that mass media represent a special dimension of socialization in relation to students. We know that students know the world through media and they are experienced and competent in media use. This is the theory of media socialization as students are socialized through media. The third interpretation is that of theory of education by the use of media. That is to say, how media are used in and for teaching. This can range from institutional radio or television station to e-learning or learning management systems. Some people call it the theory of educational media. From these interpretations, we can assume that media pedagogy includes the theory of education about media, the theory of education within the context of media and society, and also the theory of education with media. As a consequence, the objective of media education or media pedagogy is to teach students to deal with communication and dissemination of media both as users and become citizens of a so-called media society. Again, we have to recognize that media education has its basic dilemma related to the dilemma of modern education. We call it as paradox of education. We teach to influence the students in order not to be susceptible to influence. The communicative influences are primarily meant to make students free-thinking citizens. However, technological dilemmas are added to educational dilemmas. Media educators use media to influence students not to become susceptible to mediated influence. The paradox of media pedagogy is that teachers have the objective or aim of making students interested in media and at the same time teach them to be away from the media influence. The aim is to make students critical consumers of media, not victims of media consumption. For example, commercial messages of media should not be loud but revealed. Media pedagogy is different from other subjects. Media educators stimulate critical reading of the media text among students. There is a little scope for fascination when it comes to reading media text. The educational aspect has two parts. One is production and the other is reception. As regards the production aspect, students learn to manage the production tools. The curriculum contains teleological and aesthetic aspects as well. That is, from the use of computers to produce the content decided upon. The reception aspect includes making the media students become skeptical consumers of media fare. We must note that students do not produce media effects but find out or reveal these effects. They are not to be fascinated but critical of what they consume. Then, how to overcome such a paradox is the issue. The rational approach to deal with such a paradox is to make it invisible. According to Niklas Luhmann, within quotes, the educational system has developed its own ways to manage paradoxes. The educational system has in its fold a system of cultural education which in turn avoids paradoxes that are too much pronounced. The suggestion is make them invisible by paying no attention to these paradoxes. Cultural education, known as general cultivation, is a communicative trick to the issue in education. The same solution is also applied to media education to call it, within quotes, general media cultivation. End quotes. A teacher has a picture of the student. He or she leads the students in certain directions in order to fulfill the aims of the prescribed curriculum and make students learn what he or she wants them to learn. The entire process appears simple, but this is not the case. Students are not simple machines. The teacher impacting students can be seen in different ways. Generally, a teacher considers that all knowledge is factual knowledge. However, this may not be so. Yet many teachers believe in it. Most teachers also think communication with students is transportation of knowledge. In this context, experts have pointed out two factors. The first one is that a teacher cannot observe the learning process of the students. Similarly, the students cannot find out the intentional process of teacher's choice of communication. There is no easy way out to identify these processes. There have been certain pedagogical suggestions to media educators while interacting with students. One of the main suggestions is to simplify the communication with the students as much as possible. The challenge of a teacher is that in a classroom that he or she does not communicate with one student but with a group of students. Invariably, they should be viewed as a product of common cause. The idea of socialization is to categorize students by teachers under a common label. For teachers, students are, within quotes, supposed to be socialized. In other words, the social environment of the students assumes importance for pedagogical reasons. They look into the students' social environment that conditions them. Media play their part in the socialization of both teachers and students. This reminds us the fact that human beings are not a simple product of an evolutionary society. Any human society is an evolutionary society, no doubt about it. Socialization is a natural process, and every society is a society of expectations. It is said that as a mechanism of expectations, media pedagogy is oriented to meet both individual and societal expectations. Media education, on its part, is goal-oriented communication like general education. The common pedagogical strategy or plan is to organize education as situations. Media education does the same thing. Two aspects of media pedagogy have emerged from our educational discourse so far. They are number one, media education, and number two, media socialization. Ellen A. Vartela and others have elaborated media socialization thus, within inverted commas, media socialization is the process of acquiring rules and the knowledge and skills needed to enact them. We all encounter situations first as novices, unpracticed and untutored. We meet the challenges of a new situation with the resources we bring, we call it situated knowledge, and the assistance of our fellow actors, we call it as scaffolding, and the process of discovery through which we acquire new resources called inquiry, the process of communication through which we involve others in our learning, we call it dialogue, and a point of view within which to make sense of new activities and determine how to use what we are learning, we call it as framing, end quotes. In addition, we have also identified the use of media for education. That is the reason why we say that all teaching is mediated, and this is the basic premise of media pedagogy. The statement made in a way recognizes the functionality of media teaching as a specialized form of communication. As already noted, we have to remember that all educational communication is reflective. As a corollary, media pedagogy is also reflective. Mediation of relations between student and the subject, between teacher and the students, and finally between teacher and students is a reality. Each relationship calls for a specific media type to be employed for the purpose of effective educational discourse. Media pedagogy shall focus on varied dimensions of educational communication. One such dimension of education is the connectivity between rules and the self-organization. Even though it is complex mental process, it does take place. Yet another dimension is the connection between virtuality and reality. This is significant especially in a technological environment. The use of educational media has led to the arrival of theory of educational media as part of media pedagogy. It is observed that all educational relationship is mediated. All educational and all communication are thus mediated. Take the example of language and internet. Both are products of social evolution. As they are related, teaching is a specialized form of communication, and its objective is based on a pedagogical aim to provide students with a knowledge besides abilities. Thus, it represents mediation. Educational communication takes place through mediated codes. How much of it will be successful is a question to answer. In a classroom, students observe the communicative decisions of the teacher. The theory of education uses two primary concepts of operative closure and structural coupling. Operative closure reflects the students and the educational communication. In this context, the student is a closed system. He or she will observe communicative operations in his or her own environment. In a way, Educational communication is an operative closed system. A structural coupling is coupling by one system and based on operation of that particular system. It is one's observation of one's own environment. Two effects of this can be deciphered here. First one is the system that limits the operational possibilities of the other system. For example, school limits the learning stimulation to what courses it offers. The second effect is that one system provides resources to the proper operations of the other system. Then it is relevant to declare that the theory of educational media is part of media pedagogy. It is well said that all communication means communication about communication. The educational triangle among teacher, subject, and student will have a mediated communication relationship. For instance, it may lead to a structural coupling between the subject and the students. Now we can surely say that media pedagogy has three basic components. The first one is a theory of media education, a theory of the method in which one teaches students to use media and how one can teach students about media as a phenomenon of society. The second component includes theory of education within the context of media socialization. In this, mass media represent a special dimension of socialization in relation to students. The third component is the theory of educational media, where both conventional and digital media as well are included. Media pedagogy has three other additional components as listed by UNESCO. They are cognitive and intellectual training, aesthetic training and creativity, and lastly, ethical education. Connecting theory to a practice in a classroom situation is important to integrate education and society. Cognitive and intellectual training may mean the inculcation of scientific thought. UNESCO says scientific analysis of the phenomena associated with the media presupposes some degree of knowledge of the connections of these media with society as the basis of critical study. The ultimate aim is to search for truth. We have to understand operations of media institutions and their social linkages as related to reality. Media education has to analyze the matters of social reality and uses of information. The faculty of creativity is another essential component of media pedagogy. Creativity is described as, within inverted commas, the ability to apply independently and inventively information and mental images from received data, observations, and experiences. Close the inverted commas. Aesthetic training molds a person's education, his personality, and creative abilities. Aesthetic observation moves beyond the conventional observations. A person discovers new elements. It is observed that, within quotes, there is always a connection between strong aesthetic emotions and moral emotions. The products of the media function, therefore, both as instruments of ethical formation and as an initiation to reality. Development of media competencies forms the core of media pedagogy. It is clearly asserted that pedagogical media competencies include understanding and assisting conditions, describing and evaluating theoretical approaches, analyzing and evaluating examples, developing one's own theory-based suggestions, and finally implementing theory-based examples. These are done in the context of teaching with media as well as teaching about media. The additional variables are educational development, perceived media-related self-sufficiency, and technological media knowledge. Now, media pedagogy is included as a subject of teacher education in many European and American universities. The media pedagogy involves the ethical personality of media students. It reflects the social relations of students as members of a society. Of course, what is moral or what is amoral varies from society to society. Within the socio-cultural context of each society, the ethical codes of conduct, both social and educational, shall be imparted. The mandate for media education given by UNESCO states, within inverted commas, learning to live, learning to learn, so as to be able to absorb new knowledge all through life, learning to think freely and critically, learning to love the world and make it more human, learning to develop in and through creative work, within quotes. This is the crux of media pedagogy, and this is the mandate to prepare students for an unknown tomorrow. Friends, deliberately I have used the term collaborative filtering in my speech because collaborative filtering demands or signifies teamwork. Media pedagogy or media education is essentially a teamwork because media education is also a professional education. The term collaborative filtering is borrowed from software production industry for the simple reason it signifies what a collective mind can do. Media pedagogy means preparing the students for an unknown world, for an unknown society, for an unknown future. Let us all strive to understand media pedagogy as a team and prepare our students for the unknown future. Thank you very much.